This video is for anyone who is studying pre-algebra, particularly for any of those people who attend El Camino College, where I coach classes in pre-algebra. And this is a process that's often taught at El Camino College by many of the pre-algebra teachers. And this is a means by which you can learn about algebraic expressions and the order of operations. So basically what we're going to have here, if you see in front of you, we've got our first row is our input line. We've got our input x, which can be a 5, it can be a 2, it can be a -1, it could be a -4, and it could be, x is a variable, right? It could be any number of numbers. It could be a 6, 7, 8, 9, but for the purposes of this exercise, x is going to be a 5, a 2, a -1, or a -4. And we are going to run this through our evaluation machine, and we're going to end up with our output down here at the bottom. So our first row, as I say, is 5, 2, -1, and -4. Now, whenever you're following the order of operations, you've really got 4 choices for operations. You've got addition, subtraction, multiplying, dividing, right? If something's increasing, you're going to add. If it's a whole number that you're going to increase, you're going to add or you're going to multiply. If a whole number is decreasing, you're going to subtract or you're going to divide. So as we look at the first row here, we see 5, 2, -1, and -4. That's our input line. That's what we're starting with. And after our result of step 1, the 5 becomes, notice, a 2. We're now looking down vertically. 5 becomes a 2, the 2 becomes a -1, the -1 becomes a -4, and the -4 becomes a -7. So we have to sit here and look at those pairs there, 5, 2, 2, -1, -1, -4, -4, -7, and see what's happening here. Are these whole numbers decreasing or are they increasing? Looks like they're decreasing, right? 5 becomes 2, that's decreasing. 2 becomes -1, decreasing. -1 becomes -4, -4 becomes -7. So between the input line and the first row, the numbers are decreasing. So we have a choice here. We can either subtract or we can divide. If we add or multiply, that's going the opposite direction, right? The numbers are decreasing, so we're going to have to subtract or we're going to have to divide. So if I subtract 3 from 5, I end up with 2. That works for this first pair, but it's also got to work for the second pair here. And 2 minus 3, that equals -1. -1 minus 3 also equals -4. Okay, so -4 minus 3 equals -7. So there we have it. We do have a pattern here amongst all 4 of these pairs. 5 minus 3 makes 2, 2 minus 3 makes -1, -1 minus 3 makes -4, -4 minus 3 makes -7. And since we are subtracting 3 from the input, that is what we're going to write here on our first line. We're going to write down in words here, subtract 3 from the input, since that's what we're doing between the first input line and the first step. Then next we write down our algebraic expression here in the right-hand corner. We start with x, and since we're subtracting 3, we're going to take x minus 3. Again, we start with x as our input, and in our first step, since we're subtracting 3 from the input, we write x minus 3. Okay, so now that we've completed the first step, we got to look at the second step now. We have to look at the result of step 1 and the result of step 2 here in the line below it. And we have the next pair of numbers. We have a 2 here and an 8, a -1 and a -4, a -4, a -16, a -7, and a -28. So 2 becomes an 8, a -1 becomes a -4, a -4 becomes a -16, and -7 becomes a -28. So we have a choice again. We can add, subtract, multiply, or divide. But we have to do the same on each column here. We have to, for example, if we look at column 1, the 2 becomes an 8. We could say, let's add 6. 2 plus 6 makes 8, right? That works for this column, but does it work for the next column? If we add 6 to -1, does that become -4? Nope, doesn't work there. -4 plus 6 doesn't equal -16, and -7 plus 6 does not equal -28. So that's not going to work. So why don't we try multiplying? Let's see. 2 times what is going to give us 8? 2 times 4. So if we multiply 2 times 4, we get 8. If we multiply negative 1 times 4, we get negative 4. If we multiply negative 4 times 4, we get negative 16. And if we look at the last column here, negative 7 times 4 also makes negative 28. So that is our next step. We need to multiply the result of step 1 by 4. Again, we're going from 2 to 8, negative 1 to negative 4, negative 4 to negative 16, negative 7 to negative 28. And to get from step 1 to step 2, we have to multiply by 4. So we're going to write multiply the result of step 1 by 4. And then the last, at the end here, the last column, we take step 1, we take step 1, x minus 3, and we multiply that by 4. And there's our algebraic expression. And that's what we have thus far. Now we have to look at step 3. So what's happening between the result of step 2 and the result of step 3? We have to figure that out so that we can write out the last step here. Well, we're going from 8 to 9. We're going from negative 4 to negative 3. We're going from negative 16 to negative 15 in the third column. We're going from negative 28 to negative 27 in the fourth column. So to go from the step 2 to step 3, we have to do the same pattern. We have the same pattern in each column, and we have to apply the same operation to each column. So if we add 1 to the first column, 8 plus 1 equals 9. Does that also work for the next column? Let's see. Negative 4 plus 1 equals negative 3. Negative 16 plus 1 equals negative 15. That one works. Negative 28 plus 1 also equals negative 27. So for each column, going from column 1 to column 2, column 3, column 4, if we add 1 to each one of those columns, we have our step 3. And thus we write in our last step here, add 1 to the result of step 2. And then algebraically here in the lower right hand corner, we write the algebraic expression. We take step 2, we take step 2, and we have 4 times x minus 3, and we write that expression, and then we add 1 to that expression, which is the result of gives us the result of step 3. So again, really quickly, we start off with our input x, we subtract 3, we go from 5 to 2, 2 to negative 1 to negative 4, negative 4 to negative 7, so we had to subtract 3 from the input. Then to go from step 1 to step 2, we had to multiply 4 to the result of step 1, because 2 times 4 equals 8, negative 1 times 4 equals negative 4, negative 4 times 4 equals negative 16, negative 7 times 4 equals negative 28, and so we write that in. Multiply the result of step 1 by 4, and we end up with 4 times x minus 3 for our algebraic expression. Then our last step, we go from 8 to 9, negative 1 to negative 3, negative 16 to negative 15, negative 28 to negative 27, and thus we are adding 1 to the result of step 2, so that's what we write here, right there, add 1 to the result of step 2, and then we take our expression, 4 times x minus 3, and we add 1 to it. And thus we end up with our last output here, 4 times x minus 3 plus 1 here in the bottom right hand corner. This is our final output that as we run all these numbers here through the machine, this is what we end up with, 4 times x minus 3 parentheses plus 1. If you didn't understand any of this, it went by a little bit fast, this is YouTube. You can always rewind and look back on what you don't understand. Have fun and good luck.